In the quiet of space, far beyond the orbit of Mars, a faint signal flickered across the screens of the Earth Space Monitoring Network. At first, it seemed like static, another meaningless blip among the countless waves of data humanity collected from the stars every day. But Dr. Lena Moreau, a young astrophysicist with keen intuition, noticed a pattern. The signal was deliberate. It carried a pulse, a rhythm, something that suggested intelligence. Lena leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the monitor. "This isn't random," she whispered. Her voice carried across the control room, drawing the attention of her colleagues. The team gathered around, their expressions shifting from casual interest to astonishment. The signal wasn't coming from any known satellite, probe, or asteroid belt. It came from a star system far beyond the reaches of humanity's regular exploration, a place where no human ship had ever traveled. Captain Ilara Vance, standing near the observation deck of the International Space Command Center, watched the scientists with calm intensity. She had heard many such claims in her career, signals from the void that turned out to be nothing more than cosmic noise. Yet something in the rhythm, in the subtle repetition of the pulses, caught even her attention. "It's a distress signal," Lena said, almost to herself. "I've never seen anything like it. Whoever or whatever it is, they need help." Ilara stepped closer, folding her arms. "Distress signals don't just appear out of nowhere. Do you have coordinates?" "Yes," Lena replied, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "It's in the Zetherian sector, far beyond the Orion frontier. The system is uncharted by our maps. Whoever is sending this, they're in trouble." A hush fell over the room. The implications were enormous. Humanity had reached the edges of its known space, and now, for the first time, a civilization beyond the human sphere seemed to be asking for help. The next hours were a whirlwind. Earth's leaders convened emergency meetings. Scientists, diplomats, and military strategists argued over the risks and rewards of responding. Some worried that this could be a trap, a lure from a hostile species seeking to test humanity. Others saw an opportunity to make first contact, to prove that humanity could act with courage and compassion. Captain Vance was called into a private briefing with the Secretary General of the United Earth Council. The room was tense, filled with the hum of anticipation. "Ilara," the Secretary General said, his voice firm but tinged with concern, "we are considering sending a fleet, but you must understand the risks are enormous. The system is uncharted. We do not know what awaits you. You could be walking into a battle far beyond anything we've faced." Ilara met his gaze steadily. "With all due respect, sir, staying behind won't help them. If we ignore this signal, if we hesitate because of fear, what kind of species are we?" There was a pause. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the life support systems. The Secretary General's eyes softened slightly. "Very well. You will lead the mission. Assemble a fleet. Prepare for immediate departure." Within hours, the greatest minds of humanity began to plan the mission. Starships were retrofitted for long-range travel, equipped with the latest in propulsion and shielding technology. AI-driven tactical systems were integrated into the command networks, ready to assist the crews in navigation and battle strategy. Humanity was preparing for a journey into the unknown, driven by a single, clear purpose: to answer the cry for help. Ilara's team was assembled with care. The crew was a mix of veterans and young prodigies. Engineers who could fix anything with spare parts, pilots who had flown through asteroid storms, scientists who could decode alien languages. Among them was Lieutenant Kiran Das, a navigation expert whose calm demeanor under pressure had saved more lives than anyone could count. There was also Dr. Lena Moreau, whose discovery had set the entire mission in motion. Together, they formed the human hope for an alien world that might never have imagined such help. As the fleet gathered in orbit around Earth, the ships gleamed like silver fire against the darkness of space. Tens of thousands of crew members stood on the decks, ready to embark on a journey that would test their courage, skill, and the very limits of human ingenuity. Ilara walked among them, her presence calm but commanding. She stopped at each ship, speaking to the officers, offering words of encouragement, reminding them of the importance of their mission. "We are going into the unknown," she told them. "But we are humanity. We adapt, we endure, and we fight not for glory, but for those who cannot fight for themselves." The engines of the flagship ISS Valor roared to life, The rest of the fleet followed, a silent river of light flowing into the darkness. Humanity's answer had begun. Days passed in the void of space. The crew adjusted to the rhythm of long-range travel, the monotony broken by training exercises, simulations, and moments of quiet reflection. Yet always the signal remained in the back of their minds. The faint pulse, growing stronger as they neared the Zetherian sector, reminded them why they had left everything familiar behind. One night, as Ilara stood on the observation deck watching the stars streak past, Lieutenant Das joined her. "Do you ever wonder," he said quietly, "what we'll find when we get there?" Ilara didn't turn from the view. "I think we'll find a species much like us. Afraid, trapped, hoping someone will come, and I hope they see the truth about humanity. We don't abandon those in need." The stars shimmered, distant and cold, but Ilara's heart felt warmth. For the first time, she understood the magnitude of what they were about to do. Humanity was not just exploring. Humanity was extending its hand across the void, a beacon of hope in a universe that could be cruel and indifferent. When the fleet finally entered Zytherian space, the signs of devastation were immediate. Planetary scans revealed cities burning, orbital habitats destroyed, and strange alien warships patrolling with lethal precision. The Zetherians, as Ilara quickly learned, were under attack by the Kralins, a species driven by conquest and fear. The first glimpse of their suffering was a shock even to seasoned officers. Entire cities lay in ruin. Families were scattered. Resources were scarce. Yet amid the chaos there were signs of resistance. Small groups of Zetherians fighting bravely against impossible odds. Ilara gathered her commanders. "We knew this wouldn't be easy, but we are here because they called us. Humanity does not turn away from a call for help. We will strike where we are needed, protect the innocent, and show them what humans can do." The fleet began to move in formation, deploying rescue teams to the most critical areas. Human ingenuity became immediately apparent. AI systems calculated safe corridors through Kralin defenses. Engineers modified shuttles to carry more civilians, and pilots executed daring maneuvers to distract enemy ships while others evacuated Zetherians from burning habitats. The first rescue operation was tense and dangerous. Ilara personally led the flagship through a narrow asteroid field, under fire from Kralin patrols. The humans' ability to improvise and adapt turned the tide. Civilians were saved, lives were spared, and the Zetherians began to look upon humanity not as strangers, but as allies and protectors. By the end of the first day, the fleet had made a significant impact. They had shown the Kralins that the Zetherians were not alone, that help had arrived from a species willing to risk everything to defend the helpless. Ilara stood once more on the observation deck, watching the glow of the first liberated city against the darkness of space. She thought of Earth, of the people who had sent them, of the courage and determination that flowed through every human heart. And she knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had answered the cry for help, and the fire they brought would not burn out. The smoke of burning cities hung like a gray veil over the Zetherian planet. From orbit the scene was terrifying. Great fires marked the places where the Kralins had struck, and the remains of orbital habitats floated in the black void like broken toys. Captain Ilara Vance's fleet had arrived just in time, but the devastation made it clear that the Kralins were relentless. Ilara stood on the bridge of the ISS Valor, scanning the readings from the planetary surface. "Deploy rescue shuttles," she ordered, her voice steady but commanding. "We prioritize civilians and wounded. Prepare tactical teams for Kralin interference. Let's move." Lieutenant Kiran Das, handling navigation, looked at her with concern. "They're expecting us, Captain. Kralin patrols are already closing in on the evacuation zones. Any misstep and we could lose both our people and theirs." Ilara's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we will not misstep. Humanity adapts. Humanity survives, and humanity protects. Let's go." The first human shuttles descended into the burning city, weaving between crumbling towers and shattered streets. Zetherians emerged from shelters, their faces pale and fearful. Many had never seen humans before, and the first moments were tense. Some froze, unsure if these newcomers were friends or yet another threat. Dr. Lena Moreau, standing on one of the larger transport ships, activated the universal translator. "We are here to help. We will take you to safety," she said, her voice gentle but firm. Slowly, Zetharians began to move toward the shuttles. Mothers gathered their children, elders clutched what little possessions they could carry. The humans guided them carefully, showing patience, kindness, and understanding. One Zetharian, a tall figure with shimmering skin that reflected the fires below, hesitated. His eyes, large, round, and full of fear, watched the humans closely. "Why, help us?" he asked, voice quivering in translation. Ilara stepped forward. "Because it is what humans do. We answer those in need. You called for help. Humanity came." The Zetharian's expression softened slightly. He nodded and stepped onto the shuttle. For the first time, the Zetharians began to see humans not just as strangers but as allies. Meanwhile, the Kralins were not idle. Their ships, dark and jagged, moved with deadly precision, targeting evacuation shuttles. Sensors picked up missile trajectories and energy blasts. Human pilots responded with immediate efficiency. They dodged, countered, and sometimes sacrificed speed for protection. The first firefight was chaotic, a storm of light and movement across the orbit above the planet. Human ingenuity became the deciding factor. Shuttles equipped with improvised shields, tactical AI predicting enemy patterns, and coordinated maneuvers allowed civilians to escape the worst of the attack. Captain Ilara directed the fleet with calm authority, anticipating Kralin moves before they happened. On the surface, small squads of human soldiers joined Zetharian defenders. Together, they fought in streets lined with rubble and smoke. Humans taught the Zetharians simple but effective techniques: traps made from debris, diversion tactics, and ways to use the environment against a stronger enemy. In one tense moment, a squad led by Sergeant Nia Rojas encountered a Kralin patrol near a collapsed bridge. Outnumbered 3-1, the humans quickly improvised. They rigged debris to collapse under the Kralin's weight, forcing the enemy into a narrow alley where the humans and Zetharians could control the battle. The Kralins, expecting easy prey, were met with a coordinated human counterattack, forcing them to retreat. Back on the ISS Valor, Ilara watched the progress with satisfaction. "We are making a difference," she told Lieutenant Das. "Every life saved, every Kralin setback, we prove to them that fear alone cannot dominate a species united by purpose." The humans discovered something critical during these first encounters. The Kralins relied heavily on intimidation. They expected species to surrender quickly, assuming no one would risk their lives for strangers. Humanity's very presence, the humans' willingness to face danger, challenged that assumption. It became a psychological advantage. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when a human strike team, led by Captain Ilara herself, infiltrated a Kralin forward base on the planet. Using stealth suits and improvised communication jammers, they bypassed the patrols, disabled weapon systems, and created openings for civilians to escape. The operation was daring, dangerous, and entirely human in its ingenuity. Meanwhile, Dr. Moreau worked tirelessly to communicate with Zetharian leaders. She learned of their culture, their fears, and the devastation that the Kralins had inflicted. Zetharians were surprised and grateful, not just for the rescue, but for the willingness of humans to risk themselves for others. "Your species, you do not fight only for victory," one Zetharian elder said. "You fight for others." The humans smiled at each other, proud but cautious. They knew the war was far from over. The Kralins were adaptable, relentless, and already regrouping for a counterattack. Even as they celebrated small victories, the humans remained vigilant. On the outskirts of the city, Kralin reinforcements were approaching, their ships cutting through the atmosphere like dark knives. Ilara gathered her commanders. "We've shown them we will not back down," she said. "But we are not finished. We must prepare for their return. And when they come, we will meet them with fire, and not just the fire of weapons, but the fire of human determination." The Zetharians began to rally. Inspired by the humans' courage, small factions organized themselves for coordinated defense. They began to follow human advice, using human tactics combined with their knowledge of the terrain. The partnership grew quickly, proving that courage and unity could overcome fear, no matter how overwhelming the enemy seemed. That night, as the humans rested briefly before the next wave of attacks, Ilara walked the corridors of the ISS Valor. She passed exhausted crew members, pilots preparing for another sortie, and engineers repairing damaged shuttles. Everywhere she looked, she saw determination and hope. Humanity was not just fighting, it was inspiring. Lieutenant Das joined her on the observation deck. The Zetherian planet below glowed with scattered fires and tiny points of rescue lights. "They're starting to believe in us," he said quietly. Ilara nodded. "Not just believe. They're beginning to understand what humans are. We don't just survive. We adapt, we protect. And when we hear a cry for help, we answer, no matter the danger." The night sky shimmered with distant stars, and the humans below it felt a deep connection to something larger than themselves. They were far from Earth, yet their mission carried the essence of humanity: courage, intelligence, and compassion. By the end of the first week in Zetherian space, the humans had rescued hundreds of civilians, trained local defenders, and disrupted Krelin operations in key sectors. Each day brought new challenges: unexpected ambushes, damaged ships, or civilians trapped in deadly zones. But humanity's ingenuity and bravery kept them moving forward. Ilara stood once more on the bridge, looking at the tactical maps. "We've made a start," she said. "The Krelins underestimated us. They assumed fear would rule us. They were wrong. Humanity is more than fear. Humanity is fire, and that fire will burn until the helpless are safe." The fleet remained ready, shuttles prepared for evacuation, soldiers standing alert, and scientists working to understand the enemy. Humanity had made its first impact on the Zetherian world. The Krelins were learning quickly that humans were not just another species. They were a force driven by something deeper than weapons and strategy. And somewhere, in the ruins of their cities and the shadows of their fear, the Zetherians began to hope. They had called for help. Humanity had arrived, and the fire they brought was only beginning. The Zetherian sky burned with streaks of light as the Krelin fleet returned. Their ships were larger, faster, and more heavily armed than any the humans had seen before. From orbit, it looked as though the entire heavens were on fire. Yet Captain Ilara Vance did not flinch. She stood on the bridge of the ISS Valor, her gaze steady on the tactical display. "They're back," Lieutenant Kiran Das said, voice tight. "And they've learned from their last encounter." "They'll be faster, more aggressive," Ilara nodded. "Then we will be faster, smarter, and braver. Humanity does not retreat from fire, we walk through it. Prepare the fleet. Deploy all defensive formations. We hold them here." The humans had spent the past few days fortifying the orbital defenses and training the Zetherian defenders. Small victories had inspired confidence, but the Krelins' strength was undeniable. They were relentless hunters, designed for war, and they underestimated no one twice. The first attack came at dawn, a wave of dark Krelin ships sweeping toward the planet's surface. Missiles streaked through space, energy blasts lit up the void, and the human fleet responded immediately. Every move was calculated, every maneuver precise. Shuttles carrying civilians moved under the protective cover of human warships, while the main fleet engaged the Krelins at distance. Captain Ilara led the counterattack personally. Piloting the Valor herself through a gauntlet of Krelin fire, she relied on her instincts and experience. "Divert all power to shields and engines," she ordered. "Flank left. Engage evasive maneuvers." Lieutenant Das worked the navigation controls, anticipating enemy movements. "They're adjusting to our patterns," he shouted. "We need to break formation." Ilara smiled faintly. "Exactly. Human unpredictability is our weapon. Execute Plan Sigma." The fleet split into smaller groups, feinting toward the Krelins before swinging back to strike at weak points. Human ingenuity was evident in every tactic. Improvised decoys, synchronized attacks, and sudden maneuvers that Krelin sensors could not predict. Even the Zetherian defenders began to follow the humans' lead, learning to fight with cunning rather than just force. On the planet's surface, human strike teams joined local defenders. They worked together to create traps using the environment, collapsed buildings, narrow alleyways, and even fire lines to channel Krelin troops into kill zones. Sergeant Nia Rojas led a team through one such alley, luring Krelins into a tight corridor. With a single command, the humans triggered debris traps, stopping the enemy advance and allowing Zetherians to escape to safety. Back in orbit, the battle intensified. Krelin ships used swarm tactics, attempting to overwhelm the human fleet, yet humanity adapted. AI-assisted targeting systems and human creativity combined to counter the enemy's numbers. Some pilots risked themselves by drawing fire away from civilians, performing daring maneuvers that seemed impossible even to experienced observers. Amid the chaos, a young human pilot, Ensign Jace Thompson, made a daring move. He flew through a dense asteroid field using the terrain to evade Krelin fire. From this unexpected position, he launched a surprise attack on a Krelin command ship, crippling its weapons and creating an opening for other human and Zetherian forces. His action saved hundreds of civilians below. The humans discovered something vital about the Krelins during these engagements. The enemy relied on fear to dominate. They assumed species would flee or surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Humanity's courage shattered that assumption. Humans did not flee. They confronted the danger, protected the weak, and adapted to every challenge. Every life saved was a blow to Krelin morale. Captain Ilara coordinated the fleet tirelessly, moving from one sector to another. Communications flowed constantly between surface teams and orbiting warships. Every civilian evacuation, every tactical maneuver was synchronized with precise timing. The humans were learning the Krelins' patterns, predicting attacks before they happened, and countering with intelligence and courage. In one critical moment, a Krelin dreadnought moved to destroy a civilian habitat. Ilara took immediate action. Prepare interceptors. Target weak points on the hull. Disable its engines. We cannot let it reach them. Lieutenant Das smiled with admiration as human pilots executed the plan flawlessly. Missiles struck the dreadnought's engines, sending it spinning into orbit, where it collided with debris and exploded. The human fleet cheered, but Ilara knew better than to celebrate too soon. The Krelins would return and they would be more cautious, more dangerous. On the ground, Dr. Lena Moreau continued to communicate with Zetherian leaders. Through translation, she encouraged coordination and shared human strategies. Small groups of Zetherians, once scattered and afraid, began to organize, creating their own defensive positions, using traps, barricades, and clever tactics. The humans were not just rescuers, they were teachers, inspiring courage and resilience. By the third day of the battle, it became clear that humanity's approach was working. Krelin attacks were slowed, disrupted, and countered. Civilians were being evacuated in greater numbers. Zetherian morale, once low, was rising. Captain Ilara addressed her crew. "We have faced fire and darkness," she said, her voice carrying through the fleet. "We have seen fear, but we have not let it rule us. Humanity fights not just to survive, but to protect. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. And as long as we do, the Krelins will learn that courage and ingenuity can overcome even the greatest force." The speech inspired the crew. Pilots, engineers, medics, and soldiers worked with renewed determination. Even small victories, like rescuing a trapped family or disabling an enemy ship, became symbols of hope. In the middle of the conflict, a young Zetherian child no more than 10 cycles old was found trapped in the ruins of a city. Human soldiers risked their lives to pull the child to safety, shielding them from Krelin fire. The moment was small, but it carried enormous significance. It showed the Zetherians that humanity's courage was not just about strategy or weapons. It was about heart. As night fell, the fires of battle still burned, but the humans had gained the advantage. Krelin forces, frustrated by resistance and loss, began to retreat to regroup. Humanity and their Zetherian allies had held the line. Captain Ilara stood on the observation deck of the Valor, watching the planet below. Cities were still burning, but lives had been saved. Rescue operations continued, and the Zetherians were learning to defend themselves under human guidance. Lieutenant Das joined her. "They've underestimated us," he said quietly. "They thought fear would control us." "They were wrong," Ilara nodded, "and they will keep learning. Humanity is more than weapons. We are courage, ingenuity, and fire. And that fire burns brightest when we protect those who cannot protect themselves." The fleet prepared for the next wave. They knew the Krelins would return with greater force, but humanity had proven that numbers and technology were not the only advantage in war. Determination, cleverness, and moral courage could turn even desperate situations into victories. On the Zetherian planet, small groups of survivors began to rebuild, guided by human advice and leadership. Even in the midst of destruction, hope was growing. Humanity's presence had changed everything. They were no longer just rescuers, they were symbols of strength and unity, a living proof that a species could rise above fear and act for the good of others. The first major battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Captain Ilara knew that the real test was yet to come. The Krelins would not give up easily, and new challenges awaited. But for now, humanity had made a decisive statement. They would answer cries for help, and when they did, their fire would burn brighter than any darkness in the universe. And in the hearts of the Zetherians, a new hope had taken root, a hope that the humans who came from the stars could change the fate of a world. The battle had slowed, but danger still lurked in the shadows. From orbit, Captain Alara Vance watched the Kraylan fleets regroup. They were angry, desperate, and cunning. Humanity had turned the tide, but the war was far from over. The Zetherians looked to her and her fleet with hope, but Alara knew that hope alone would not win this war. Action, courage, and clever strategy would reports came in that the Kraylans had established a massive space station near the edge of the system. It was heavily armed, a fortress of metal and energy, and it served as their command center. Destroying it would cripple the enemy and give the Zetherians a chance to reclaim their world. But getting there would be dangerous. Many believed it was impossible. Alara gathered her commanders in the Valor's strategy room. "This is our chance to end the Kraylan threat," she said. "But we need more than firepower. We need brains, courage, and heart. We will split into strike teams. Some of us will disable defenses, some will lead evacuations, and some will infiltrate the station itself. Everyone has a role. We move at first light." Lieutenant Das raised a hand. "Captain, infiltrating the station? That's almost suicide. Their defenses are unlike anything we've faced." Ilara's eyes were calm but firm. "I've faced worse odds, Kieran. Humanity adapts. And if we succeed, countless lives will be saved. That is worth the risk." The night before the operation, the crew worked in tense silence. Engineers checked equipment, medics prepared emergency supplies, and pilots went over every maneuver repeatedly. Humans and Zetherians shared strategies, learning from each other. Every person knew that the next day could change everything, for better or worse. At dawn, the fleet moved toward the Kraylan station. Their approach was careful, masked by debris and asteroid fields. Strike teams boarded small, fast shuttles, their mission simple in theory but dangerous in practice. Disable the Kraylan station's shields, sabotage weapon systems, and open the path for civilians trapped on nearby planets. Alara led the primary strike team, accompanied by Sergeant Nia Rojas and several elite human soldiers. Their shuttles slipped through patrols, using shadows and timing to avoid detection. The station loomed above them, dark, massive, and menacing, bristling with weapons. Every second felt like an eternity as they moved closer. Once inside, the team faced a labyrinth of corridors, filled with Kraylan guards and surveillance systems. They moved silently, communicating with hand signals and small devices that jammed detection sensors. Every step required patience, precision, and courage. Meanwhile, Dr. Lena Moreau worked with Zetherian allies outside the station. They coordinated diversion attacks to draw Kraylans away from critical areas. Explosions and energy bursts lit the surrounding space, masking the infiltration team's movements. Humanity's tactical thinking and willingness to take risks impressed the Zetherians. They had never seen such coordination between courage and intelligence. Inside the station, the humans encountered their first major obstacle, a heavily guarded control hub that controlled shields and energy fields. Sergeant Rojas signaled the team to take cover. Using a combination of improvised hacking devices and precise movements, they disabled security protocols and opened a pathway. The Kraylan guards were caught off guard, giving the humans a chance to strike efficiently. Deeper inside, they found Zetherian prisoners, civilians and soldiers who had been captured during earlier attacks. The sight of frightened faces, some injured, hardened the humans' resolve. Alara knelt beside a Zetherian child, helping to free them from restraints. "You're safe now," she whispered, a rare softness in her voice. "Humanity will protect you." One of the prisoners, an elder Zetherian, looked at Alara with wide eyes. Why risk yourselves for us?" he asked. Alara smiled faintly. "Because it is who we are. We do not abandon those in need. That is the heart of humanity." As they continued, Kraylan reinforcements arrived. The humans used a combination of clever traps and environmental hazards to hold them off. They collapsed corridors, redirected energy fields, and even used small explosions to create confusion among the enemy. Every move required ingenuity, teamwork, and courage. Outside the station, the human fleet engaged the Kraylan forces attempting to intervene. The battles in space mirrored the chaos inside the station, with precise maneuvers, coordinated strikes, and human creativity keeping the enemy off balance. The Zetherians, inspired by humans, joined the efforts, using their knowledge of the terrain and local space to gain advantages. During the infiltration, Ilara faced the station's central command chamber. It was heavily fortified, but she knew that taking control here was key. Using a combination of agility, tactics, and quick thinking, she and her team bypassed defenses and confronted the Creelan officers. A brief but intense skirmish ensued, ending with the humans gaining control and shutting down the station's main systems. With the shields disabled, energy weapons neutralized, and prisoners freed, the team signaled the fleet. The Valor and other ships launched a final strike, using the humans' precise targeting to destroy critical Creelan infrastructure. The space station, once a symbol of fear and oppression, was now a testament to human courage and intelligence. On the surface, civilians evacuated safely as humans, and Zetherians worked together to stabilize the planet. Fires were still burning, but hope had returned. The Zetherians looked at the humans not as strangers, but as heroes who had risked everything to protect them. Captain Ilara took a moment to reflect. "This is what we fight for," she said softly. "Not glory, not conquest, but life, hope, and the courage to stand for others." The Zetherian leaders gathered around, expressing gratitude. "We thought all hope was lost," one elder said. "But you came. Humanity answered when we called. You risked everything for us. How can we ever repay you?" Ilara shook her head. "You repay us by living, rebuilding, and never forgetting that courage and heart can defeat even the darkest forces." As night fell over the Zetherian planet, the humans looked toward the stars, knowing that the Creelans might still return. But humanity had proven something powerful. Their ingenuity, bravery, and willingness to protect others could overcome even overwhelming odds. They had infiltrated the heart of the enemy, freed the oppressed, and given hope back to a world that had almost lost it. Lieutenant Das joined Ilara on the observation deck. "We've done something incredible," he said. "We've shown them what humans are capable of." Ilara nodded, her gaze on the horizon. "And this is just the beginning. Humanity's fire will burn as long as it is needed. We answer calls for help, no matter the danger, and the Creelans will remember that." The Zetherians began to rebuild under human guidance, their society learning new strategies, tactics, and ways of thinking that would help them defend themselves in the future. Humanity had not only saved lives, they had taught courage, cooperation, and resilience. In the quiet moments between battles, humans and Zetherians shared stories, meals, and laughter. Bonds were formed, trust was built, and a new alliance was forged, not through conquest but through bravery and compassion. Ilara knew the final confrontation with the Creelans was approaching. The enemy would not give up easily, but the human fleet had learned, adapted, and grown stronger. They were ready to face whatever came next, armed with courage, strategy, and the unyielding fire that defined humanity. As she looked at the stars above, Captain Ilara whispered to herself, "The heart of humanity is stronger than any weapon, and as long as that heart beats, we will answer every cry for help." The humans had reached the heart of the enemy, freed the oppressed, and inspired hope. The next challenge would test them further, but they were prepared. For humanity's fire was not just in their weapons, it was in their spirit, their courage, and their willingness to stand for those who could not stand for themselves. And somewhere deep in the Creelan ranks, fear began to spread. They had underestimated humanity before. They would not make that mistake again. The Zetherian sky was tense and electric. Scouts reported that the Creelans were assembling their full fleet for one final assault. They had taken losses, but they were not finished. Their ships moved with deadly precision, cutting through the void like black knives. Yet humanity's fleet was ready. Captain Ilara Vance stood on the bridge of the ISS Valor, her hands resting lightly on the console, eyes scanning every reading. "They're coming," Lieutenant Kieran Das said quietly, "and this time they mean to destroy everything." Ilara's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we will show them what humanity is capable of, not just with firepower, but with heart, courage, and determination. Prepare all ships. Evacuation teams, stand by. Interceptors ready for deployment. This is the moment we prove ourselves." The Zetherians, inspired by human leadership, had joined the preparations. They helped reinforce planetary defenses, coordinated with human pilots, and established safe zones for civilians. The partnership between humans and Zetherians had grown into something more powerful than either species had imagined, trust and courage woven together. As the Creelan fleet approached, The humans initiated a series of deceptive maneuvers. Shuttles moved in patterns that seemed chaotic but were carefully planned to confuse enemy sensors. Decoys, holograms, and synchronized attacks drew the Krellans into traps. The first wave of Krellans hit human defenses only to find themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Captain Alara led a strike team into the heart of the battle, piloting the Valor with precision. Her crew moved with flawless coordination. Missiles were intercepted, energy blasts diverted, and small Krellan ships destroyed before they could reach the planets below. The human fleet danced around the enemy, unpredictable and relentless. On the surface, human and Zytherian teams worked to evacuate civilians while defending key locations. Sergeant Nia Rojas led squads through burning streets, using environmental traps and clever tactics to slow the Krellan advance. Every life saved was a victory. Every Krellan setback a step closer to hope. The Krellans, frustrated and enraged, launched their elite assault ships, vessels capable of immense destruction. Humanity met them with ingenuity. Young pilots like Ensign Jace Thompson used asteroid fields to hide their movements, striking the enemy from unexpected angles. Engineers created improvised energy nets that disabled enemy engines. Humans turned every challenge into opportunity, proving once again that adaptability was their greatest weapon. Amid the chaos, Alara received a report from a rescue team on the planet's surface. A group of Zytherian civilians, including children and elders, was trapped in a collapsing city district. Time was short. Without hesitation, Alara dispatched a squad led by Sergeant Rojas, who moved with precision and bravery through the ruins, guiding the civilians to safety. The Krellans tried to intercept them, but the squad's knowledge of the terrain and clever use of the environment allowed them to outmaneuver the attackers. Every civilian reached safety, and hope grew stronger. Meanwhile, Dr. Lena Moreau coordinated communications between human and Zytherian forces. She encouraged the Zytherians to fight strategically, using their knowledge of local geography and human tactics together. Strength is not in numbers alone, she reminded them. It is in courage, intelligence, and unity. Humanity fights because we care. You must fight with the same fire in your hearts. By the third day of battle, the Krellans realized their standard tactics would not work. They had underestimated humans and their determination to protect others. Their formations became disorganized, morale dropping as one ship after another fell to careful, calculated strikes. Humanity's unpredictability, combined with courage and intelligence, proved to be a weapon they could not counter. The climax approached as the Krellan flagship moved to strike the Zytherian planet directly. It was massive, bristling with weapons capable of destroying entire cities in a single attack. Alara and her commanders quickly devised a daring plan. The fleet would create a distraction, drawing the flagship into a trap, while a human strike team would board the vessel and disable it from the inside. Alara led the boarding team personally, her heart steady despite the danger. The shuttle cut through enemy fire, weaving past energy blasts and debris. Inside the Krellan flagship, the humans moved quickly and quietly, disabling security systems and avoiding patrols. Every step required courage, precision, and teamwork. They reached the central command chamber facing the Krellan leaders. A brief skirmish ensued, intense but controlled. Using clever tactics, the humans disabled the flagship's main systems, leaving the vessel vulnerable. Outside, the human fleet launched a coordinated strike, finally destroying the Krellan flagship in a brilliant explosion that lit the void like a second sun. The remaining Krellan ships, witnessing the fall of their command vessel and the coordinated strength of the humans and Zytherians, began to retreat. Their morale broken, they fled into the darkness of space. Humanity and the Zytherians had won. The Krellans would no longer threaten this system. On the planet's surface, civilians and defenders cheered. Fires still burned, but the sound of hope was louder. Alara walked among the Zytherians, helping where she could, comforting those who had lost homes and inspiring those ready to rebuild. Humanity had not only fought bravely, they had taught courage, unity, and determination. A young Zytherian child approached Alara, clutching a small, broken toy. "Thank you," the child said simply. "You saved us." Alara knelt, placing a gentle hand on the child's shoulder. "No, little one. You survived because you were brave, too. Humanity only helped you remember that courage matters no matter the danger." The Zytherian leaders held a council with Alara and her team. They expressed their deep gratitude, their voices filled with hope and reverence. "We called for help," an elder said. Humanity answered, You came with fire, not to destroy but to protect. We will never forget you." Alara smiled, but her mind already looked to the future. "This is only the beginning," she said. "You have survived, and now you must rebuild. Humanity will leave, but our fire will remain with you. The courage to protect, to unite, and to fight for what is right." As the humans prepared to depart, the Zetherians built monuments, planted trees, and created memorials for those lost. They shared stories of bravery, courage, and human ingenuity. The bond between the species had grown stronger, a partnership forged in fire and hope. Captain Alara stood once more on the observation deck of the ISS Valor, looking at the recovering planet. The fires of war were giving way to the light of dawn. Humanity had come to a distant world, answered a cry for help, and shown the universe the true strength of their spirit. Lieutenant Das joined her. "We did it," he said quietly. "They're safe. We proved that fear doesn't rule us." Alara nodded. "Yes, but more importantly, we showed that humanity is not defined by weapons or power alone. Humanity is defined by courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act when others cannot. We answered their cry, and we brought the fire that saves, that inspires, and that gives hope." The fleet departed Zetherian space slowly, keeping watch over the recovering world. The humans had changed the fate of a species. They had shown that even in the darkest hour, light and courage could prevail. Humanity's fire, unpredictable and unstoppable, had burned brighter than any enemy. As the ISS Valor and the fleet moved toward Earth, Captain Alara allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. They had faced overwhelming odds, navigated danger, and risked everything for strangers. And in doing so, they had reaffirmed the core of what it meant to be human: courage, compassion, and the determination to stand for others, no matter the cost. The stars stretched endlessly before them, cold and distant, yet filled with possibilities. Humanity had left its mark on Zetheria, not through conquest, but through bravery and heart. The Kralins had learned a lesson they would not forget. A species that fights for others is a force that cannot be broken. Alara whispered to herself as the fleet sailed through the void. Wherever there is a cry for help, wherever hope is threatened, humanity will answer. We are fire, and our fire will never go out. Below, the Zetherians looked to the skies, a sense of peace and determination filling their hearts. They had called for help, and humanity had arrived. The universe was a little brighter now, and hope had found a home in the stars. And somewhere far across the void, countless worlds watched, wondering if humanity would one day answer their cries as well. One thing was certain: wherever humans went, courage and fire would follow.